Delta 4, Lima Tango.
Yeah, Kilo Delta 4 Lima Tango. Lovely audio from you today. The name here is Mark, Mike Alpha Romeo Kilo, and I'm about 15 miles southeast of the city of London in the county of Kent in the southeast of England. Back to you there, KD4LT M0JCF. I'll give you a report on the next over.
Okay, Mike 0, Julia Charlie Foxtrot, Kilo Delta 4, Lima Tango. All right, Mark, the name here is Bob, Baker Ocean Baker, Central Tennessee. Good signal coming in this way. And you're peaking 5 and 9, peaking 5 and 9 in Tennessee today, over.
Well, thanks for the 5 and 9, Bob. And in contrast, you are 5 and 5 to me, but the audio is perfect. I generally have, apart from bursts of noise, I generally have a 0 noise floor here. So any signals right down on the floor, I'm normally very good with. But really pleased that you've come back to me. I think part of the problem my receive is always lower than my transmit is the antenna. I'm using a 5/8 wave vertical antenna. The base of it's about 25 feet from the floor. The radio's very common. It's an IC-7300, and the power output 100 watts straight out the back of the radio, Bob. Back to you, KD4LT M0JCF.
Still running the quadra amplifier, about 600 watts out, and I got a 3 element Yagi. It's about 45 feet up there, pointing your way there, over.
Yeah, well, the QSB, despite the Yagi, the QSB is dropping your signal to 5 and 1, and then back up to 5 and 5, 5 and 6. I find this quite a lot, Bob. I'm getting people in the USA whose signals seem to be really low to me, but a perfect copy. But I can't explain it. I think it's just propagation. It's obviously, we're coming towards sunset here. I think sunset's in about, well, probably less than an hour now. And because it's low in the sky, maybe the first hop of my signal to you and vice versa is it hasn't got the the sun's influence in the ionosphere anymore. I don't know. I'm not too sure. But no, it's great to speak to you today. And if you want to know the weather, the miserable weather in the southeast of England, it was raining this morning quite persistently, and this afternoon it's broken cloud, a few bits of sunshine, but the temperature hasn't got above 7 degrees today, and we've got a week of this to come by all accounts, another week of just rain and cold. So spring has come but disappeared again, so spring is now decided to go back to sleep and come back in about a week or so time. Bob, back to you.
Yeah, Mark, yeah, very good. Yeah, we got the exact same thing over here. It got kind of cold for us at 7 degrees Celsius and spotty showers today, so we got your same weather. We had some warmer stuff here, but now it's disappeared, and we're back into a little bit of cooler, but that's okay. Gives me a time to play radio more. And as far as the propagation, yeah, we're here at lunchtime, just going on almost noon here. And then, so the propagation's really popping on this end. Was on slow scan TV on 10 meters, and it was so crowded I couldn't get in there very often. So I jumped off and came over here to Simon, as you call it, CQ, but you're still holding in there nice and steady there, over.
Yeah, well, you've just peaked at 5 and 7 that time, and I know what you mean about the slow scan TV. I was on 10 meters this morning, our morning, well, midday-ish, and it would have been breakfast time on the east coast of the USA, and you know, I'd made a few US contacts, but I did hear the slow scan TV higher up the band. I did hear like several signals, but nothing that I could resolve, and the only way I resolve slow scan scan TV is, you know, with a handheld device near the speaker, and likewise if I'm transmitting, it's the other way. I hold the handheld device near the microphone. It's not ideal, just a bit of a fun thing. I'm not into it seriously enough to you know, go through cables and sound cards and all the rest of it. But you know, it's I find SSB is probably the most that I do. I do AM and FM, especially on the higher bands. Well, 10 meters of course is FM, a little bit of AM, and I've worked AM right down to 80 meters. But you know, AM's one of those things making a resurgence at the moment. I think a lot of people have started to drag old equipment out of sheds, garages and attic spaces and are firing it up for the first time in many years. I've got a lot of old radios that I really need to restore now, Bob, and maybe get more seriously into the AM side using vintage equipment rather than modern equipment. So I'm just wondering, you mentioned SSTV and you're obviously on SSB now, but do you do any of the other popular voice modes, Bob? Back to you.
I did a little what you call used to the C4FM, and I had that hooked up, and on my 991 I had that monitor on it and everything. But that's kind of hit and miss. I should check into that more often and a little bit of that. Besides that, just some FM stuff on 10 meters, a little bit of satellite, but not too much luck there either. And do a little FT8 and FT4 there, over.
Yeah, QSL, Bob. Oh, the FT8, FT4. That's that can separate one from another, can't it? I don't do any digital modes, and I'm not against them. You know, I'm not one of these who finds them pointless or anything like that. It's just a new mode that I just haven't explored yet. And you know what, Bob? I was thinking of looking at FT8 as a way of using the 30 meter band, because I've never worked 30 meters. So I just maybe I'll use FT8 there. But I'm also interested in RTTY. I used to listen to a lot of RTTY way back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, and I used to have an old mechanical teleprinter, the Creed 7E, and I used to, when I was a shortwave listener, used to go through piles and piles of paper, just, you know, watching hams exchange the exchanges that they exchange. And if you change the baud rate, I could also read Reuters news agency. So that was always a fun thing. But yeah, I think on 30 meters I'd like to maybe explore the FT8 there. If not, a bit of PSK or something like that, you know, a bit of real-time communications. But as I say, yeah, the digital, I really haven't touched it yet. And it's funny because I also my background was telecoms, then broadcast television, including digital television, and then before I retired I was an IT engineer. So I'm not against the digital world. You know, I've encountered digital many times in my working life, and I just haven't got into it in the amateur radio. Bob, back to you.
Okay, Mark, yeah, very good, yeah. So I got into it a little bit, and then Bailey for my XYL, she's a licensed ham too, and she's Japanese, so she has a little problem with the language, not so much receiving, but she's got a little accent to her, and she gets on the FT8 and makes quite a few contacts on that, so and she kept her KL7 or KL3 call. We came from Alaska, so she's quite popular on FT8 when they see that Alaska call. But as far as teletype, yeah, I do a little bit of that. Not so much transmitting. I got an old Model 28 teletype machine here, and I get the news and everything, and I play around with that mechanical thing there. Over.
Yeah, totally understand that, Bob. It sounds quite fascinating, and especially your wife being Japanese. I've only made a few contacts into Japan. Of course, the only word I knew, I think, was konnichiwa. That was the only word, and that was because maybe I'd heard it on the television. But he was very happy to speak to me. It was on 17 meters, was the longest QSO I've had with Japan, and you know, it was fantastic. You know, it ticks another box. But yeah, in that direction, I tend to make Eastern Siberia quite easily. But it's that next hop into Japan that I haven't had too much success with, and likewise the Far East. You know, not too successful with the Far East as of yet. But it's early days. It's early days. I'll tell you what I'm doing at the moment, Bob, is I'm working my way through all of the US states now. I'm not chasing awards or anything. It's just that personal thing, you know, where you, in your paper logbook, just tick the box that says, yeah, another state gone. And I'm not sure, without looking at my list, I was down to 15 states. I had just 15 states left, and I think, and I can't be sure, I think Tennessee might have been one of them. So you might be my first contact into Tennessee, Bob, but I'm not completely sure of that one. You may be second, Bob. You may have come second. Back to you.
Oh, okay, Mark. Yeah, very good. Yeah, hopefully I'm your first one. Yeah, when I was up in Alaska, we lived up there for about 25 years, and boy, we could talk to Japan like I used to talk to them on that's how close we were. And I used to talk to them all the time. They were just constant. I think I talked to half the Japanese amateurs in Japan from Alaska there.
Yeah, QSL. Well, Alaska is one of those states that I haven't got, but slowly, catchy monkey. You know, it's basically Alaska and Hawaii are the two sort of most distant, I suppose, that I haven't got in the USA. I think the furthest west I've got in Canada is Alberta, so just British Columbia and then Alaska would do it for me with Canada, and then, as I say, Alaska. No problems with California and Oregon and Washington State. I've had fantastic ragchews with people in those states. There's been not a problem. I've actually visited California, so I can tick that box. I've physically been there. Likewise, Nevada and Arizona and Florida. Far too many times I've been to Florida, but it's everything in between, Bob. I haven't visited everything in between, and my wife and we keep saying that we're going to do this road trip at some time, you know, coast to coast, and yeah, we would be piling through your good state there. That would be quite interesting. And I'm wondering, you know, I could cheat, couldn't I? I could get to certain states in the USA and then work the states that I'm missing. I could probably drive through them and use 2 meters. I know it's cheating, and it wouldn't be in the back of my mind, really, the done thing. But yeah, I might get to that, Bob, where I just have to drive through the states and work everyone on 2 meters. Back to you.
Okay, Mark. Yeah, very good. Yeah. When you're traveling across the country, just bring your QSL card. Let's say Arkansas, wherever, California, you just show them your QSL card and have your suitcases in hand there. Over.
Yeah, Roger. Well, you know, we'll see. I've got to get the QSL cards printed first, but you know, it is what it is. Yeah, I've got plenty of time to trial with this, and the only problem, the only downside with travelling across your country using radio is I've got a station manager who would be travelling with me, and amateur radio isn't her thing, so I'd have to wait until she goes to sleep at night. Back to you.
All QSL, I understand, yeah. Yeah, same thing here. Well, with the world and this political thing going on here, I'm kind of scared on traveling, but I would like to get over to Europe and everything and travel around there a little bit. I'd probably be safer in your part of the world there, over.
Yeah, I think you could be right. You could be right. I mean, for me as well, it's funny you should say about travelling around Europe. Of course, for people in, especially where I live in the southeast of England, for me, it's a 40-minute drive to the Channel Tunnel. Then you drive the car onto a train which takes you through the channel to France, and you know what, the world's your oyster then. You can just drive anywhere you like practically in Europe, and I've done it a few times where I've driven to France and then turned left, gone up through Belgium into Holland or the Netherlands for I used to drag race motorcycles, so did one of my daughters, and we used to go over to Drachten in the northern part of Holland or the Netherlands. I keep saying Holland, but and so for me, it's really quite an easy and simple thing. As I say, it's literally the tunnel is 40 minutes away, then it's another half an hour, and you're on the continent. So yeah, you want to make your first stop when you get here. Make your first stop in England. Of course, you've got England, Wales, and Scotland, which could take you, well, I suppose like anywhere, a lifetime to visit. And then, yeah, straight through the tunnel, you're into Europe, and then it's just see which way the wind blows and drive, and just keep driving. Of course, there'll be places that you don't want to go to, and there are places that are absolutely stunning and mind-blowingly good. So, yeah, you'd have to get here and try it, Bob. Back to you.
To see quite a bit, and do the tourist thing, but who knows, maybe we'll get over there one day. We talked about going to Poland because my family's from Poland, and what the language barrier be if I went over there?
Yeah, well, Poland is one of those places, it's a big country, and it's one of those places that we got a lot of migrants from Poland in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, and they've become brothers to us in a way. But I tell you, where it seems to be more popular than Poland is what was Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic. They seem to be very popular. They do stag weekends to Prague and places like that. One of my nephews had his stag weekend in Prague. So, if you want the Eastern Europe and old school Eastern Europe, then the Czech Republic would probably be a good place to head to. And likewise, also very popular is the former Yugoslavia, which obviously is now Bosnia and Croatia and Serbia and many other small countries now. And that is a very popular destination for British holiday makers. Then, of course, the other places that are quite popular are Bulgaria and Romania. And, it's really hard to say. As I say, I've never been to these countries myself, and I have travelled all around the world as far as Australia, New Zealand and the Far East. But, yeah, I've never been to the nearer countries, apart from the near continent to me. So France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Spain, those sort of places. They're sort of on our doorstep. But, yeah, I've never been to Eastern Europe myself. My daughters have been to Croatia quite a few times, Romania, places like that. The furthest east I've been, apart from Greece and Turkey, is Italy. So that's just across the water there from Croatia. That's the story here there, Bob. Back to you.
Well, okay, well, very good, Mark. Yeah, I haven't been to too many places. Me and Max fly out. We went to Japan, and I enjoyed the heck out of that. But since my wife speaks Japanese, we didn't have no problem. But as far as I could tell, over in Japan, I wouldn't have no problem getting around there with the language barrier, because a lot of things are in English, and the travel things, the boards or whatever, everything's, a lot of it in Japanese and English, so it's easy to get around. I imagine you can get around. But, a lot of people do a lot of walking versus driving cars there. Over.
Yeah, walking is one of those things that is second nature to us in the UK and to Europe. That and the bicycles, you know. I mean, you go to the flat countries such as northern Germany and the Netherlands, etc. Belgium, they love to cycle all around there. When I was younger and I travelled around the Far East, you know, sort of a Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, places like that, and Indonesia, you know, everything was in English. That wasn't a problem. And you'll find that also in a lot of Europe, you know. I mean, if you know where you want to go, then it doesn't really matter what the sign says, because, you know, they're English letters. So, you know, if you want to go to Brussels, even when it's spelt the Belgian way in Flemish, or whatever language, I'm pretty sure it's Flemish, you know, when it's spelt their way, you still know where you're going. And generally underneath it'll have English, and I think that's because Europe is such now a connected state, that, you know, everyone speaks English as a second language. So therefore, you know, it doesn't matter what country you go to, if they've got the signs in their native language and then underneath in smaller letters, you've normally got it in English, because they know that, you know, if you can't read the native language, you most likely can read you know, English. So that's where Europe is good. I mean, places like Japan, China, and some of the Far East, of course, they've got a language, you know, an alphabet that you just wouldn't recognize. So it was always handy that generally things are in English as well as native language. And of course, places like New Zealand, Australia, and that, it's all in English anyway, you know, albeit with an accent. And that's the way I'm going to leave it. Back to you, Bob. Yeah, sorry, Bob. Just at that point there, just on that over, you went down to about a 4 and 2, but not a problem. I basically got the gist of what you were saying, and I was going to reply. No, it's gone out of my head. I actually had a reply to what you just said, or what I thought you just said, but that's no problem. No problem. That was it. It was Japan. One place that I was going to visit when I was coming back up through Southeast Asia. We were going to visit Japan, but to be honest, the money got a bit tight, and we knew that Japan, compared to a lot of places, was very expensive for certain things and dirt cheap for others. For instance, you can go to Japan and you can buy amateur radio gear or motorcycles for next to nothing. It's incredibly cheap, but everyday living seemed to be really quite expensive. And because money was getting low, money was getting tight, we decided, I was traveling with a friend at the time, we decided maybe we'd have to give it a miss and go back there another time. Well, for me, it never happened. You know, I settled down, got married, had children. So my big travelling days, backpacking days, sort of stopped, and now it's just local. I mean, we come to the USA quite often, but you know, that's for holidays. You know, that isn't backpacking and travelling where you're on maybe a tighter budget. Bob, back to you.
Expensive in Alaska. Only thing I complained about was the airline tickets going over there. It's so expensive. I don't know why. Maybe they don't want tourists over there.
You know what, that makes you wonder, doesn't it? Or maybe it's because they don't get enough tourists that they have to have the prices high to actually like counteract the fact, you know, like you go for us, we go to Spain and places like that. For instance, from London to Barcelona in northern Spain, you know, you can get a return flight for like £44 or $50. You know, $50 for a round airline ticket to and from Barcelona. So, you know, and that's because, though, that everyone flies there all of the time. You know, very popular destination, especially for long weekend trips. So that's why I think the prices can be kept low, because they've got a massive stream of people. And there are other places where, you know, the plane might not even be full up. So what they do is, you know, they have to have high ticket prices to actually make it pay. I don't know. That's the idea I've got in my head, Bob. Back to you.
Yeah, that could be possible. That could be possible. I kind of agree with that. And yeah, I was gonna drive to up to Ontario, up in Canada there, to see my cousins there, and I checked on an airplane ticket, and it was under $300 round trip. So I figured, well, I'm just gonna fly because I could. It'll cost me less to fly there. Over.
Yeah, QSL. Well, you know what? I agree. From where you are to Ontario, and I've got friends that live in Ontario. Funnily enough, I've got friends that live in Ontario and Montreal in Quebec. So, you know, and I've never seen them, never visited them. So for me, of course, I'd have to fly. But from where you are, although, you know, for you economically it's probably cheaper, I don't know, I like the idea of the road trip. Now obviously it's got to be over 1,000 miles, maybe 2,000 miles, I don't know, Tennessee to Ontario. But I'd be tempted, you know, to drive up to is it Lake Erie, around that way. I'm just thinking, I think it's Lake Erie is the first one you come to. You know, I'd be tempted to do a road trip up to Lake Erie, then go and see Niagara Falls, cross over Niagara Falls, and then you're on your way to Ontario. But it's the road trip for me. I suppose for you as well, because, you know, you're on home territory. It just makes it a bit too obvious, you know, like you could be driving, but maybe you wouldn't see what I would see. For me to drive from Tennessee to Ontario would be an absolute adventure. We're talking about coming down to Florida in October this year, and I've said to my wife, because my daughters won't be with us this time, they're both in their 20s, but they won't be with us, and I said, look, rather than just stay at one place for a week and then somewhere else for a week, how about we do the road trip where we drive from, say, Fort Lauderdale down to Key West, because I've never been to Key West, drive to Key West and then drive back up the Gulf Coast up to Clearwater. We've been to Clearwater many times, you know, but I said, but we can see the countryside, we can see the ocean, we can see, you know, like we can see all the differences as you drive around. So for us, you know, the road trip would be the adventure, I think, not just the destination. Bob, back to you.
It's rather nice weather there, and you could go to the Daytona Amateur Radio Ham Swap for 3 days there. It lasts for 3 days, and then the week before, I think it's the week after, is the Daytona 500 race there. Over.
Yeah, QSL, you know, I think if I went to anything amateur radio while I was with my wife in Florida, I think she'd tear me a new one, as they say. But I don't know, maybe we could come to a compromise. I would like to, I really would like to. I'd like to see what there is to see, you know, maybe buy a few pieces. Of course, you've got to be careful because I'd have a weight restriction, you know. It's not like I can just put it in the trunk of the car and then drive home again, you know. So, you know, maybe a few choice pieces just as memorabilia. I have actually bought radio gear in the USA in the past, and the only difference is, you know, sometimes the older 2-meter gear has got the different channel spacings, that sort of thing. So then when you get home, you realise, and you have to have the thing open and sort out diode matrix and stuff like that. But no, it was just an idea that I'm just chewing over over at the moment. As I say, we've been to Florida many times. I think the first time I went was 1987. So, you know, we really love the state. But my daughter's a bit more travelled on the eastern side. She's been to places like New York and New York State. She last year she was in Cleveland, Ohio. So that's what made me think of Lake Erie. And you know, so she's been around that side. Me, I've been the other side when I was younger with friends. So we used to drive, you know, the full length of California, that sort of thing, or drive out into Arizona and then up through Nevada. You know, it's great, lovely to drive around. Lots of desert, of course, and Australia's the same thing. Lots of desert, so you do have quite a few hours sometimes of not seeing anything. But when you get to somewhere that you know you was aiming for, it's always worth the trip. Bob, back to you.
Oh, okay, well, very good. Yeah, I haven't. I'd like to go to Australia someday, but there's a lot of things I like to do. We just settling into our new place, actually. So everything's just starting to settle down here. But you have to go to the Orlando Ham Fest, and you know, there's always Cape Canaveral too. You know, you can see there too.
Yeah, I've done Cape Canaveral several times. The first time was in '87, actually. And then I've been there with my wife before the children come along. And then I've been there since. In fact, we was there in the last time I was at Cape Canaveral was 2013 when the Atlantis exhibition was opened. You know, Space Shuttle Atlantis. And it only opened that year. So for me, that was fantastic. Being a pyromaniac and a rocket freak, you know, it was fantastic to see Atlantis. But I think my most vivid memory of Cape Canaveral in '87 was seeing that Saturn V, you know, laid on its side and spread out for you to see absolutely everything. I mean, it was the most awe-inspiring sight. Of course, I'm just about old enough to remember the Apollo missions and them landing on the moon in '69. I was born in '63, and I remember we watched it on TV along with just about half the world. But you know, so for me, rocketry and that sort of thing, the engineering is fantastic, and I've really enjoyed my times. As let's say, the last time we was there, which was 13, my daughters, it was their first time, and they weren't overly impressed. You know, as you can imagine, two teenage girls just didn't want to see their dad going on and on and on about the various rockets they've got out in the garden, in the rocket garden. And then of course Atlantis, they were more in tune with Atlantis because they've been brought up in the latter stages of the shuttle program. But no, the rockets and stuff, no, it didn't do it for them. So but you're right, yeah. And Orlando, I mean, Orlando, that's got to be the place that you go to if you're a first time in Florida. You've got to go to Orlando, and you've got to visit all of the theme parks. I mean, we have done the theme parks to death. I cannot imagine how many times I've been to all of the major theme parks and the minor theme parks around there. But do you know what it is, Bob? It's the culture. I actually am an Americanophile, as they say. You know, I love America. I love Americans. I love the culture. I love the way that, you know, the different states as well. You know, it's almost like being in different countries. So, you know, it's never the same. And of course, and when you go to a tourist destination like Orlando, you meet Americans, Canadians, Mexicans, etc. You meet them from everywhere, and so you get to a sense of the varied culture that you've got out there, you know, and I love it. I love it being big, brash, hot. I love all of it. Back to you.
Oh, very good, Mark. Orlando's quite the place, and there's quite a few people there, and everybody's down there want to have a good time. So it's quite the place, and the Cape Canaveral's quite the thing. I remember this the Saturn V taking off, and I always wanted to go see one take off, but my folks wouldn't take me there, so I kind of missed out on all the Saturns taking off. Those guys are all my, what you call it, I admired those astronauts so much. They were kind of my heroes there, over.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. They are all American heroes without a shadow of a doubt, you know. And the thing is, not many of them left now, is there? Poor old Neil Armstrong went just recently, fairly recently, and in fact, I've just been watching a documentary or a docudrama on was it Netflix or Disney Plus? It was one of those subscription channels that we've got here, and there was The Right Stuff. Now, I've seen the movie The Right Stuff in the 1980s. Very good movie. It was obviously the Mercury 7 astronauts, and you know, the program starting, but it also focused on Chuck Yeager and all of those pilots that were trying to do what the Rocketeers were doing. So you had Chuck Yeager and other pilots trying to go for altitude records, etc. But of course, the Rockets won in the end. But yeah, I was just watching just recently, literally in the last few weeks, the drama of the Mercury 7, and then there was actually a factual documentary about the Mercury 7. And I mean, you know, if anyone's a heroes, it's those. You know, you put one man in a small tin can on top of a huge great bomb and just point him skyward and hope that he comes back. You know, it was certainly pioneering days. I mean, Saturn V was awesome in itself, as were the Gemini program in between Mercury and Saturn Apollo. You know, the Gemini program was fantastic. You put two men in a small tin can the size of a VW Beetle and just launched them into space. You know, it must have been an absolutely phenomenally fantastic time to be around, you know, especially to live around there. And you're right about the rocket launches. I mean, you obviously didn't get to go there, but there was one year my wife and I were in Florida before the children were born, and you know, they had a shuttle launch about to go, but it got delayed and delayed and delayed, and we, at the time, we kept on saying we're going to drive to Cocoa Beach to watch it, but it got delayed a day. Then it got delayed another day. Well, we were due to move off, I think, to somewhere like Naples in Florida on the Gulf Coast. But what we did is we extended our stay in Orlando so we could drive to Cocoa Beach, and we delayed our stay in Naples. But they kept on doing these delays, and in the end I said, come on, look, we can't spend the whole 2 or 3 weeks here in Orlando. We need to get to Naples now. So we drove to Naples, and the day after we drove to Naples, they launched the space shuttle. So we totally and utterly missed it, but it would have been absolutely awesome. The only rocket launch I have seen is one out of, it might have been Vandenberg in California, quite by accident. This was around about 1990, and my friends and I were driving in California, and we saw this. You know, we wasn't sure what it was at first until like everyone was watching, and we realized it was a rocket launch. I'm not sure if it was a Minuteman test or a Pershing test or one of those. You know, it was obviously a rocket that had been launched out towards the Pacific. So that was exciting in as much as I'd seen one. You know, I'd seen a real life big rocket be launched, albeit from a very long distance. I mean, it was no more than a speck and a white trail of vapor behind it, but and you could hear the rumble in the distance, a very faint rumble. But you know, I can say that with my own eyes I've seen a rocket launch from the USA. Back to you.
Okay, well, I seen one of those shuttles take off, but I was on the other side of the state there toward Tampa, and I seen that thing take off. I could see it, you know, the smoke trail going up, and boy, that thing went up fast. I don't think it went like the Saturn, you know. I think the Saturn was a lot slower going up, but it was a bigger rocket, but you know, that shuttle went up there pretty fast, and man, that took off fast, and then I was outside working one day, and I heard the sonic boom going over, and I kind kind of scared me in the hat, and they said, oh, that was just the shuttle coming in and landing there, over.
Yeah, QSL Bob. Yeah, I've heard that. Many people say they listen for the boom or the double boom, and yeah, I'd love to see that. A landing shuttle would have been just as good as watching one take off. I think the closest I've ever come is obviously living where I lived. We had Concorde, you know, the supersonic airliner, and sometimes you could be down in the West Country, what we call the West Country, so Cornwall, Devon, Dorset, one of those counties in the west of England, and as the excuse me, as Concorde would accelerate out over the Atlantic, once it had left you know, the shores of the UK as it were, you would hear the boom there. And then a couple of times we've heard military jets sonic booms, but I'd like to see, you know, well, obviously it's not going to happen now, but I'd like to have seen the shuttle actually land as much as take off. Bob, back to you.
The Keto, I'm going to get out of here. It's getting close to the lunch hour for us, and my wife is pretty functional.
Yeah, QSL Bob. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have this rag chew with you. It's been fantastic. It's been well over 40 minutes, and you know, it's you know, 1 40-minute rag chew beats 25 5 and 9 73 next any day. For us as well, we're coming up to 20 to 6 in the evening, so it would be time for the evening meal, I suppose, this side. And then my wife and I, we're going to the cinema this evening. We're going to watch a movie. We're going to see the movie 65. I think it's rated PG-12. I don't know what that would be in the USA. I would imagine, you know, teenagers or, you know, younger can see it. Or no, teenagers or above, isn't it? So yeah, we'll have something to eat, and then we'll go out and we'll watch that movie. As I say, Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and I look forward to the next time, and I'll check the logbook, and I'll see if you was first or second out of Tennessee. I've got a feeling you were second, but you know, we won't hold that against you for not being quick enough. Bob, all the very best to you and your lovely wife. 73 to the pair of you. Have a great lunch, and have a fantastic weekend, and find me again on 10 or 12 meters. I look forward to it. I'll say bye-bye for now and take care. Where are we? Kilo Delta 4, Lima Tango. This is Mike 0, Juliet, Charlie Foxtrot. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Okay, Mark. Yeah, very good. What was the movie you were going to see?
Sorry, Bob, did you ask a question? I missed it.
Yeah, what was the movie you were going to see?
Oh, yeah, it's the movie 65. As I say, I think it's rated PG-12, so it's not a big grown-up movie. It's you know, it's aimed at teenagers and above. But I think it's a science fiction. Apparently, it's about some people that crash land on the Earth 65 million years ago. I don't know what the story really entails beyond that. I'm sort of thinking Jurassic Park meets aliens from the past. I don't know, but it was just something we decided to do on a Friday evening. Go and see a movie. So yeah, that's what we're going to see, old chap. Back to you.
Okay, Mark. Yeah, all right. I'll research that one. I'll research it and see what I can come up with. I haven't heard it. I'm always at 10 meters, so if you hear me, give me a call, Mark. Enjoy the QSO a lot. Mike 0, Juliet, Charlie Foxtrot, KD4LT. 73, buddy.
Yeah, 73. Take care. Good luck. Great weekend, and bye-bye for now. Okay, before I go, QRT, if anyone would like a report, this is Mike 0, Juliet, Charlie Foxtrot, southeast of England, listening for once. Okay, nothing was heard. M0 JCF going QRT. This frequency is clear for use. This frequency is clear for use.